My name is Macy. I'm an editor here at PSU Vanguard, and today I'm interviewing Brady Roland, who is a current senator in ASPSU and running for president. So my first question for you is based on something you wrote. I'll read the quote first. My experiences as a longtime activist for different issues that press our community have led me to this position where I can continue to advocate for pressing issues that students care about. So the question is, what specific issues do you advocate for at PSU?
At PSU, I advocate for quite a few things, but I would say the main thing is campus public safety. Currently, I serve on UPSOC, which is the University Public Safety Oversight Committee, and they basically take a look at campus public safety and see what we can do to improve it. And I'm also a part of the Jason Washington Art Committee, which tries its best to memorialize Jason Washington, whose life was taken by campus police. So I would say I'm a big advocate for campus public safety, and outside of school, I've been an activist for gun violence prevention for going on 6 years now. So definitely safety is my biggest topic that I am an activist for.
Okay, awesome. And how do you see that evolving this upcoming term? What are some plans you have related to campus safety?
Well, this upcoming term, well, first I'd like to start by saying it's ever evolving, campus public safety is, and I think there's a lot of room for growth and, there's a lot of room for growth, but primarily, I think the biggest change I want to see is the remembrance of Jason Washington by our community as a whole. For someone whose life was taken by our campus police, we have to be able to, own up to our mistakes as a campus. And I think that one step we can take to do so is by showing up to the symposium that's happening June 6th. Which will be an unveiling of the mural of Jason Washington in the Smith Student Union. And I would really like to see campus public safety there because I think their acknowledgement that this happened is the biggest thing, biggest important thing that would show like our community growing from this terrible tragedy. But otherwise, I think I would like to see more of an emphasis around student relation to campus public safety. Like, I don't think a lot of students know how many resources there are out there for them to be safe on campus. And I'd like to boost that platform a little bit so that all students know, like, hey, did you know that you can be escorted by campus public safety after hours? And did you know all the trainings that they have and what they can help you with? Etc. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Are you an advocate for Disarm CPSO?
I am not officially a part of Disarm, but I work very closely with Disarm PSU. Katie Cagle, one of the organizers for Disarm, and I have been in cahoots for quite a long time. Well, I'm a freshman, so as long as it can be, but I think the movement is very important and very credible, and I think their coalition of advocates are very strong-willed, and I want to, learn from them and grow from them. But I'm not officially a part of Disarm PSU.
Okay, for sure. So we talked about campus safety and CPSO. Do you have any other either plans or issues that you're interested in? Projects that you're advocating for at PSU this upcoming term that you're kind of running on? What ideas would those be?
Well, so far, in my time as a senator, I've been a part of the Student Advocacy Committee, and as we know, elections are coming up in November for the for the general elections, and I think engaging students in that election is going to be really, really important because it's going to be one of the most important elections in our lifetime. It's a rematch. It's really genuinely like going to be a face-off. And I think getting as many of our students to vote as possible would be so important because students make up the biggest block of voters in our country, but that's only as long as they vote. So I think advocating for people to register to vote and to vote in this upcoming election is going to be really important.
And what does that advocacy process look like for you?
Well, I'm a part of the Oregon Student Association, which is a statewide group of students. I'm in the Council of Legislative Advocates, and what we do is we work with the local legislature to, advocate for bills that students care about. But another one of our initiatives that we're going to be working on is doing voter drives and get out the vote. So I guess what it looks like is rallying the rest of ASPSU to be a part of this initiative to get people to register to vote, and just make sure everyone on campus knows how important this election is and how important and easy it is to get registered to vote and to vote in general.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Can I ask about, you said you're on the Student Advocacy Committee.
Yeah.
What kind of differentiates that from, I guess, senator meetings as a whole? If senators are already, their function is to advocate for students, what's the difference between the Student Advocacy Committee and in reality?
Right. So the Senate as a whole, we work on making sure that the SFC, the JRB, and the Senate and LCOR are all functioning properly. But then when we break it down into committees, we have the Student Life Committee and the Student Advocacy Committee. Student Life focuses on, student life, and they really look at what we can do to engage students on our campus to make sure they want to stay on campus and make sure they want to be here and it's a place that feels welcoming. And then Student Advocacy, we work on uplifting students' voices to the proper places. And that's one of the biggest things that I want to continue doing is uplifting students' voices. So, for example, either a committee puts on events, but then we can also have meetings. So earlier this last term, we hosted a meeting between we hosted a meeting between the Board of Trustees Secretary and Super, which is a group that has been, kind of really a loud voice on this campus, and for every reason, they should be. But there was some conflict between the president's office and Super, and we wanted to uplift their voice to the president's office and really just get that animosity to subside. And so we hosted a meeting between them, and then even later we brought President Cudd in to question her more about campus public safety, and we just facilitate different types of ways that we can uplift students' voices to the bureaucracy that is the administration.
Okay, for sure. Thank you. And that lends well to the next point, which is based on something that you also wrote. This is a quote. Navigating the bureaucratic system that is PSU's administration can be frustrating. However, a good representative can make this process exponentially easier. Can you explain what you mean by this? Any examples of the frustrating bureaucracy at PSU, and how have you made this frustrating process easier for students to understand and access?
Right. So a lot of the times students assume that the president or the board of trustees is this all-powerful force that controls basically everything. And so, like we saw at the Board of Trustees meeting a couple months ago, there was some, protest, and a lot of the time, and that protest just didn't end well for either side. And so what we had to do is navigate who we should actually talk to about the issues that were concerning the students that were protesting. And so what it took was going to the students, asking what they wanted to be heard, and then going to the proper place to advocate for them. And so what we learned is that we needed to go to the Board of Trustees Secretary, Caitlin. And she met with us and she met with Super, and the talk was very good. But essentially, there's just so many outlets in this school where you have to plug in different, challenges that students are facing. Like if you want to talk about tuition, you don't go to the president, you go to track. If you want to talk about campus public safety, you don't go to campus public safety, you talk to UPSOC. Like, there's just so many different places where students have to learn to go, and by already having that knowledge, like, I can advocate for them so they don't have to do the heavy lifting, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. So you mentioned an example with PSU Super. Do you have any other examples of student groups, organizations that you were able to connect to the right place or the right administrative branch, and that resulted in a certain need being met for those students?
I would say that we haven't had the opportunity to connect another group. I think Super was the biggest one, and in the meantime we had been working on other things like events that would engage students to come talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't think of another example that happened while I was in office that we brought students to administration.
Okay, and with the example of PSU Super, can you explain what was accomplished in that connection between administration and PSU Super? Were there needs met? Were there requests kind of brought to completion by the administration, or what resulted as that?
Right. So Super's main concern was that they weren't being heard.
Mm-hmm.
Their voices were getting swept under the rug. And basically what we did is we gave them a platform to speak to someone from the president's office, someone who is very high up, and get their voice heard. And what we saw from that was I can't think of the word. Excuse me.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
And what we saw from that was, a diminishing, I guess, of the animosity and the struggle that was between the two groups, the administration and Super. And when we brought President Cudd in a few weeks later, we got to talk more about it with her. And Eric Knoll from government relations actually came back and followed up with us. So it's kind of this ongoing communication between us and them. Mm-hmm. But what I can say is that we have seen a change in the way that the administration has viewed this issue as a whole. For example, with the president's new task force on dialogue and climate and nonviolence and violence prevention, we have seen that she really does care about this issue, and she really does want to come to a level point where we can have this open conversation and continue to talk about it. So I would say that our little part that played into the aspect of creating change there was really important, but I think Super did most of the heavy lifting there by just showing up and getting their voices heard.
Okay, for sure, thank you. Okay, so this next question is about kind of low activity among senators. We've heard reports or complaints among students that they feel like there isn't enough action going on in ASPSU. Mm-hmm. Can you explain any challenges you faced this year in enacting real change as an ASPSU member, or ways that you envision those roles evolving next term to be more actionable?
Right. So when I came into ASPSU, I came in and I didn't even know what ASPSU was. I just kind of understood that it was student government. But this is my first time being on a student government. I didn't do it in high school. I've never done it before. And so when I came in, I kind of didn't know what to expect. But what I can say from what I've learned is that at the beginning of this year, there was a distrust between LCOR, which is the part of ASPSU that does, campus coordination, finance coordination, the president, the vice president, and them, and the senators. And what took us so long before we could really get down to doing the heavy work was this building of trust between the two groups. I came in, I didn't really know what was going on, so I didn't have a distrust or trust for anyone yet. But what I can say is that in the past 6 months, we have built this group of people who have completely taken everything within them and pushed it into action. And they have been doing as much as they possibly can under the circumstances. And I think that it's really important to acknowledge that there's always room for growth and we can always do more, but under the circumstances and what had happened in the elections last year and what led to this distrust definitely set us off on the wrong foot. But next year, I'm really hoping that with the group that we have built, we can get real change and real work done because we trust each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Let's see. I think we covered a lot of these questions. I think we can talk about you more like as an individual. Can you talk about your major and how that plays a role in your goals or your vision or your work in ASPSU?
Yeah, of course. So like I said before, I've been a gun violence prevention activist for a very long time, and outside of school, that's what I see myself doing probably for the rest of my life or as long as it's an issue in this country. So I'm majoring in community health promotion, which is under the School of Public Health, and I just changed my major to that a couple of weeks ago, but I'm starting to get my footing in the major, and I'm taking my first class right now for that major, and I'm really excited about it, and I think community health promotion is where I want to be. I really do care about public safety, not just about guns, but in general. And yeah, I think my major and my aspiration for what I want to do after college all really feeds into my activism in student government.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
And then I guess this is something that I was wondering as you were talking about that. When we're talking about campus public safety, before you had mentioned that you're not an official member of Disarm CPSO, but I guess my question is, do you support the ideas that they are holding up? Or how do you see that's, you already gave a lot of good examples, but like specifically with CPSO, do you see any reforms that you'd want to make, whether it's disarm or not?
I do see some reforms. I think, well, I've worked with the Chief Halliburton pretty closely this entire year, and I really do think that he is trying his best to have a police force that has grown from the events that happened in 2018, the murder of Jason Washington. But there's definitely reform that still needs to happen, and I would point to Disarm PSU for the certain specific policies, but as far as my own opinion, I think where CPSO is right now is the best it's been in a very long time. However, there's always opportunity for improvement.
For sure. Okay, awesome. Those are all my questions.
Okay.
So do you have anything that you want to add that I didn't really ask you about that you want to touch on more?
I don't think so.
Okay, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It was good talking to you. And that's it.
Nice to talk to you as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's the end.